Good morning. It is an episode of Dualistic Unity Raw. It's Sunday. It is another Sunday on our new schedule, which means that it is no longer 8:30 in the morning for me. It is 10 a.m., which means that I've had a little bit more time to wake up, have a coffee, took my cat for a walk, had an excellent morning of just stretching and taking some time to myself. I'm just feeling good. Honestly, it's interesting because a lot's been happening lately with Dualistic Unity in a lot of ways. I'm just going to move this microphone a little closer. We've had investor meetings. We've got changes that are happening to our group schedule, for example. We've got changes that are happening to our website. We've got changes that are happening to our campaigns and our strategies. We're working on an email newsletter that we've had for quite some time, but we're tightening that up and doing more on that side. Speaking of which, if you haven't registered for our newsletter yet, please do so at dualisticunity.com. You'll get lots of updates and cool shit that we don't send otherwise. We've been trying to be more active on Patreon, which has been a lot of fun, but I also had my daughter's birthday recently. So holy shit, there's been a lot in the air. And admittedly, this morning, my body woke me up and went, hey, motherfucker, what about me? And it did so in the only way that it knows how, with pain, a little bit of tightness. And so I took the time to listen to it. And outside of the work that we've done on Dualistic Unity this morning, I just made myself take that 20 minutes where I could have been rendering a video or doing something else to not. And just sit my ass down, stretch out a little bit and listen to my body and just let gravity do its work again. And I know that this is something I've said previously, but it really is just that. Just allow yourself to stretch into different positions and let gravity help you. You know, it's good for you. It calms you down. It really just makes you focus on your breathing, and it makes you very much aware of where you have that tendency to no, I got to go do something. I got to do something, because you're going to want to, if you have that tendency to get up and stop stretching. But if you do that, you're probably going to be in pain again soon. And so it really is a trade, and that is very much a great life lesson. If you don't take the time to actually enjoy and pay attention to your life, you start suffering eventually. You start to forget what life is all about. You know, all this work for what? If I'm in pain all the time while I'm doing it, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I just wanted to communicate that to our listener and everybody who might be here today. Hello, everyone. Make your life and you your priority. I mean that wholeheartedly. As somebody who's going to turn 45 in a couple of weeks, live for you. Because most of the people that you're worried about what they think of your life, and most of the things you're worried about, like what's going to happen in your future, probably never will. You know, or those people will grow up and they'll change. But you will remain. As long as you're here, you're going to be here with yourself. Take care of that self. I really do suggest that.
Yeah, it really is all you got. Like, realizing that, like, oh, I got me. Like, how much I've realized that my life has been relative to assumptions that I'm making about my environment, assumptions about how I'm looked at or perceived. And it's interesting how that concern gets you to a spot that's just continuously concerned. Like, that doesn't overcome anything. Like, living for anything outside of yourself and trying to prove yourself to something else outside of yourself is just such a draining process. And it's like, for what? Like, what exactly is the benefit of that? To mitigate some short-term feelings of, discomfort, change, growth. Because, like, if you're already resisting shifts and changes, and even just letting go of this idea that my opinion is correct, like my preference is correct, and maybe seeing what's there when it's just looking at things as they are without so much of me in the way. Because I think that's kind of a trade with feeling more relaxed, is not holding on so tightly to, like, my perspective, my opinion, my perception of this, like believing that my perception of reality or what's actually going on is what's actually going on, because that goes both ways. You get that immediate sense of satisfaction, gratification of like, oh, I feel like I'm correct. And then you get all of the fear that comes with that whole entire landscape, because it goes both ways. To have some certainty, or feel like you have some certainty, you have to almost separate yourself from things, and it can make it very difficult to connect. It can make it very difficult to empathize, to be sensitive to environments that you're in. Like, that sensitivity is such a huge trade to feeling like what's going on, instead of just being there without so much of an opinion. It's not so much the opinion of things that are in your head, it's the opinion of just your life right now, as you are, whatever you bring to the table, whatever environment that you're in. Like, that's the opinion that you're dealing with. And so as that shifts and changes, like, there's other experiences. It doesn't mean that it gets rid of, discomfort and suffering, but at least you're at least involved in that process, instead of feeling like you're almost disconnected or have this sort of victim mentality towards it. So yeah, taking the time for yourself, taking the time to, just realize that at the end of the day, like, you're born alone, and there's a day that you're going to die alone, and to try and appease certain things outside of yourself that you have no control over one way or the other just really doesn't make much sense, to give it that much weight, or trading, the fullness of your life for someone else, to satisfy someone else, to gratify someone else, to think that you have control over how someone sees you, despite being so far from the truth, because you have no idea. And I think that state of self-honesty and the experience that goes with it, the physical experience that goes with, opinions, preferences, your perspective, believing that is the truth, like, just that belief goes with an experience of some degree of tension. And letting that go feels like you're losing a part of yourself, but it isn't at all. It's like you're losing a lot of that rigidity and tension that you felt like you needed to feel safe and secure, when all it was doing was making it more difficult to interact with the world.
Yeah, because what you're really losing is the fantasy. You're not actually losing the potential. You're not losing the opportunity. You're not losing this moment. But what you could lose is pretending that the fantasy is reality. And you could lose that distraction. And those are the things that really can go away. And when I'm thinking about living for myself, it's like it's not living for the idea or the opinion. It's living for this moment on a moment to moment basis. I'm living for this moment. I don't know what's going to happen after this call, but I know that I'm here right now. I don't know, what I think about yesterday or what someone else might think of me, but I know that I'm sitting on this chair right now, and I'm holding this cup of coffee, and I'm chatting with two friends and all of you. Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday. Good to see you all. Or good for you to see us, you know what I mean.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's right. No, I love that though. They're just that playfulness, and I was thinking, I was chatting with a friend earlier today, and just they're just checking in, like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing good. I'm doing all right. And I know sometimes we worry about each other. Are you okay? Are you overwhelmed? And when I think about being overwhelmed, it's like it's usually just being overwhelmed by my opinion and thinking that that is all that exists. And so all I see is my opinion. All I feel is my opinion. All that I experience is my opinion. And that can be very overwhelming. But that's not all that there is. And so once I can see that it's just an opinion and it's not reality, it's not what's happening, it's only what I'm thinking about, it feels less overwhelming. It just feels whelming. Maybe not overwhelming, but just whelming. Yeah. And then eventually it's underwhelming, and it's not a big deal. And so when I'm thinking about, living. It's just this moment is all that I can experience, and that's my priority. And then in prioritizing this moment, it feels like I'm prioritizing myself and not other people. And even when I think about other people and the expectations, it's like, if I'm saying that I'm trying to satisfy someone else, it's really I'm satisfying my need for control. It's really about me, and I'm just using other people as a scapegoat because they're so conveniently there. And I don't want to have to always be responsible for my feelings. And it's like, no, but that's not a burden. It's an opportunity
To grow.
to be able to respond and to be able to observe my responses, and that feels more like a gift than a burden nowadays, even though it can be overwhelming when I focus so much on my opinion and nothing else.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on, I think a big part of taking care of yourself too is just addressing those needs, addressing how much energy and attention that you're spending just trying to maintain connections that at the end of the day wouldn't be maintained if you weren't putting that extra effort. And I think we get really caught up in that. Like, we forget that a relationship with somebody shouldn't necessarily be work. Like, a friendship with somebody shouldn't be work. It shouldn't be an approval contest. It's not a vote. You're not running for high school president, right? But often we feel that way. Like, we have to pander to them. We have to say the right things to them. We have to make them feel better. We have to be available to them. We have to make sure that, we are meeting their expectations because we have expectations of them. Right. And those expectations come from our need. And so occasionally it's very important to take a good, honest look at your relationships. And it's not comfortable to do so. It's not comfortable to do so, but it's important to do that and to recognize which relationships are ultimately fragile and built on need from one side or both. There was, we did an episode, I don't know, a while back. I think it was probably in March. And you and I were talking about relationships, and I had expressed that there are a number of people. So I like talking to people in the community. It's fun for me. I reach out to them, especially if they're going through stuff. I've had a few people reach out over the last couple of years going like, things are really fucking dark and hard. I'm kind of worried about myself. Do you want to talk? And I'll be like, yeah,
yep,
I can try and figure that out. No problem. So you have those relationships, and those are fun. But sometimes those relationships become very one-sided over time. There's the illusion that they're not. There's this almost like this play. And I had mentioned it in an episode that some of these people will get so used to this that what they'll do is they'll tell me all about their stuff. And then afterwards they go, but how are you doing? And that's really code for, can you give me some more insights from your own story? It's not an actual, hey, how are you doing? There might be a little bit of that there. But that's definitely not the real reason. And so I said this on an episode. Within about a week or two, a group of people, or several of these people, just stopped talking to me. Now, what's really funny about that is because I was right. See, those people would get offended like, oh, how dare he say that about me? I wasn't talking about them specifically. I was talking about how that often happens in relationships. And the only reason you'd be all pissed about that is if it hit. If there was a nerve, it hit, and you didn't want to look at it, and you're like, no, that's not true. That's not true. That makes me feel terrible about myself. It's like, yeah, and there's your opportunity to address that relationship in your life, to actually decide for yourself, is this a relationship that I really appreciate? Is this something that is part of my life that I shouldn't be like trying so hard to get something out of? That would it still be there if I wasn't so fucking needy? Right? And it's a chance to just be a better friend and to be less needy as a person. Or you can get offended, right?
Or you can throw a bitch back,
right? And then just go like, well,
light your pitchforks.
Fuck that. Pretty much it. In which case, I would
take responsibility or fuck you.
That's it. Right.
Yeah.
And what's funny about that is here I am saying that, these people are ultimately, and again, not wholeheartedly, it's not like they're saying, how you doing? Give me some answers, right? But there
It's
is
not
an
personal.
underlying tone of that because every conversation's about that.
Yeah.
And to get offended about that, like, oh, he's saying I don't care about him, and then not reach out to say, were you talking about me, or is there something wrong in our friendship? It's like, yeah, you're proving it again. You're like, that's the whole point, is you're still just fucking thinking about yourself. Right, and so it's
Not
that.
me.
It's that. But there's always that. Like, if one of you is to say, like, oh yeah, I work with somebody every day and I don't find they're really listening, I would go to both of you and go, do you find them? I'm really sorry if that's coming across, because I certainly am trying, but I'm willing to take in some feedback and
Right.
that whole thing. And you probably both be like, oh, we were just making someone up.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the point, is that if there's a part of me that's concerned about it,
It's alarming to hear.
it's alarming to hear.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. You can't escape yourself. You can't escape yourself. And that self-honesty, like, it starts to hit. And so if someone is talking about someone or something, like, you don't know if they're talking about you, but if you start noticing tendencies in yourself as they're talking, you can very quickly assume that they are, or believe that they are, with no basis whatsoever. They could very well, odds are talking about just anyone, just a general thing.
Yeah.
And like, the offense comes when you take it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You believe, like, you see something there that hits in a certain way. And so it can feel like everyone and people are talking to you just as you're being self-honest and like looking at certain things, and then not responding with, appropriate actions, or taking that into consideration, and then shifting and changing and doing things differently. Like, you feel it in yourself if you hear those things and then don't shift and change, or do make it about you, or continue to, believe. Bear's digging for some flesh.
Just put it on the floor. If you want to just take the whole basket and put it on the floor, at least then he's there. He's good. All right, thank you.
But
My cat jumped into my laundry basket. If anybody's wondering, it's just that it was propped up on something, and so I wanted to make sure he was good. Please continue.
yes. So anyway, as you start hearing things like that, and being more sensitive to things, it's like, that's the thing you can't escape, is that sense of like, oh yeah, there are things, noticing, and then just, taking the steps, not making it about you, but also taking in, not assuming like, oh, they're talking about me, and getting all offended, because that's, again, just, bringing the attention back to yourself and kind of creating the same pattern.
Because what if I wasn't talking about that?
Well, exactly.
Right.
See, that's the thing. Is that nobody, not one of these people who's currently pissed and not talking to me, has ever reached out and said, did
Were
you
you?
mean me?
Uh-huh.
Right? Which I would be happy to answer, because even if the answer was yeah, then there's an opportunity for a conversation like, oh shit, I didn't realize you felt that way, or hey, you're a human being, just stuff like that. But yeah, it's funny. We do have a question, and this kind of ties into what we're talking about right now. So my boyfriend is deeply involved in self-help, and this has seriously reduced his abusive behaviors, which is great. But I have simultaneously noticed our lovemaking has felt stiff and numb since. Any advice to get our lovemaking back to being hot and steamy? And again, this is just coming from experience and life lessons and everything else. I think that the two go hand in hand, because labeling his actions as abusive from the start, and I don't know him or anything about him, but I'm going to say right now that when you start delving into the whole self-help thing, because there's some consequence happening in your relationship, and the person that you're in a relationship with saying like, you're not doing the right things, you're not making me feel right, you're not considering me, you're not looking at this, you're not being sensitive, you're not being empathetic, you're not doing this and this and this. So you go into self-help to become a better person, right? Except that now you can't get out of your head, and you're constantly worried about the other person's expectations and perceptions. And so all of a sudden, the steamy lovemaking is gone, because the comfort level is gone. As much as it's well-intentioned, The fact is, this person no longer feels like they can just be themselves to the same degree. Now they have to feel like they have to be an ideal, and that who they were previously was abusive and unnecessary, as opposed to coming from something deep, something that was still trying to express itself. He's just trying to box it up for the sake of making the relationship last. And that relationship, while it will continue on, is going to lack all life.
It's almost like having a like a stretchy square, and if you're thinking about yourself, you push through it in one direction. That's like the physical, side of the tension. Thinking about yourself, the response to something that gets pushed that way. But then if you start making it about you and assuming and trying to control yourself and like taking it in, it's like it pushes the other direction. So it's like the tension all goes in a different direction. It's not as outwardly expressed, but it's inwardly felt more so. Because I can think back when I was younger to being like getting very worked up. When I was in my early teens, like just getting angry, very competitive, and like I'd get frustrated because like I would be good at something, and I was never like a dick about things, but like there was definitely that edge that was outwardly expressed, but I wasn't really worried about things. And then there was sort of a shift that it went more internal, and it was more like fear of those times that I would mess up and like get frustrated with myself. And so if you're making about you, it's going to be felt in one way or the other. And I guess the alternative is like recognizing it's like there isn't the like egotistical satisfaction as much, like recognizing all those behavioral patterns and like not trying to be something else in response, but just like looking at them for what they are and then showing up and like seeing that, oh yeah, there's sides there. They're not like wrong, but they're responses to things. Like they're coming from something. They're coming from certain things within yourself, assumptions that you're making that are then getting outwardly expressed. So then it's like that outward expression shifts to internal that was always there. It was just getting pushed out, and now it's in. And and so just seeing that you don't have to make it about you. You don't have to fix those things, but just look at them for what they are and see like, oh, right now I don't have to act on those things. I don't have to assume that whatever's pushing me to believe that I have to, act that way or respond is the truth.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of goes towards the next comment where, he's having problems performing in the bedroom, so on and so forth. And I've talked to numerous clients about this, and it always comes down to the same thing. Pressure. It comes down to pressure. If he feels like he has to perform, that you have expectations, that the relationship's on the line, that all this stuff, especially if you're expecting him to be able to have hot, steamy lovemaking, you see, like all of this, as much as it's well-intentioned, puts pressure. It puts pressure, and that ruins enthusiasm and life and enjoyment and excitement. It makes it impossible to feel attracted to somebody when you think you have to perform in a certain way or they'll leave, right? And the same is true for your side of things. I mean, the fact is that the best thing you could do for him right now would be to not need to have any steamy lovemaking, would be to not put any pressure on him whatsoever. If he can't get erect, why do you need him to? Why does he need to? Like, if he's not feeling it, why does it have to be an obligation? Why does it have to be some sign of a healthy relationship? All of this stuff adds pressure. It adds pressure, and it removes him from the relationship. It removes him from you and the moment that you're both in, because he's now trying to fulfill a role that you ultimately want him to fulfill. So at the end of the day, it comes down to, are we more worried about him or his lack of fulfilling your needs? And again, this isn't a conversation that's comfortable by any means. It's a conversation that you have to have with him. Because it could just be that he's just not into it, and he's trying so hard that he's forgotten actually how to enjoy himself. And that could be true on both sides.
Yeah, because those things in intimate relationships like that, like you got to be relaxed for those things to happen. Like if you're tense, if you're focused on like something happening and needing it to happen, and if it doesn't, it's wrong, it's incorrect. Like there's something that needs to be done, like that need creates tension. It's going to create, the pressure that you mentioned, and all of that takes you further from being able to just enjoy the experience too. Because like, what is it about? Is it really about like penetration, or is it about like enjoying moments together, relaxed? Because if it's for the former, then there's going to be a lot of tension involved in every situation. And like, is that very enjoyable? Like, would it be enjoyable for everything to work and be super tense? Like, would there be that, complaint?
We got to check this box off.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem. But it doesn't. A healthy relationship means this and this and this and this.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't come from that place. It doesn't come from that place of a checklist. How to be in a correct relationship, what it's like, what it means to be in a relationship. Oh, we do these things because that's what, couples do. That's what people in relationships do. We should be doing this, that. Like, your relationship is yours. Like, it's unique to every person, all of their relationships. So there couldn't be the right way to be in a relationship that you look to. Everyone's got a very unique relationship. If you're trying to like live based on that and feel good about how the relationship is going, you're going to try and like curate it into things, and it's going to get very stale one way or the other. It's going to be very tense, very rigid, because it's going to be all about, how the relationship looks, how it fills your sense of need, sense of lack, instead of being, complementary to a life that you're living where you are, more relaxed. And then that's just a nice bonus, all the things that come with the relationship. But as soon as a relationship is an obligation, as soon as it's something that has to be maintained, then it begins going very, very stale very quickly. And that, can be seen in a bunch of different components of it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. The relationships that I've always admired the most are the ones that you could feel a genuine friendship was at the core of it, right? And so when things are changing in a relationship, I feel like people, myself, have often forgot about the friend, the person that I was so attracted to when they were just living their life for them, and it had nothing to do with me. And people forget that person, that was the person that first caught your eye, but that person had never met you before, had no idea you existed, was doing their own thing. And yet the way that they were living, the way that they were showing up for them was beautiful. And that caught your eye. And we forget that. And then we're in the relationship and we think we know people, but it's an ongoing process. And you're getting to know your boyfriend right now from this new place, from this new perspective that he's living from. And so it's very easy to get caught up in like, I know him, I know the way that we were, I know the sex we used to have, but that was with a different person you were sleeping with. You've never slept with this person, or you're making love to this new person, and they're getting to know you in the same breath. And it's always easy to fall back on the older experiences, but every moment with even the same person is brand new. And instead of thinking of what isn't happening, you can show up as a friend just to hang out and to have fun and to keep it light. And the way that I have a pulse on keeping it light is whether or not I feel the weight of my opinion, the weight of a judgment, an expectation that's not being filled. It feels heavy. But the people I love to hang out with are the people who need fucking nothing from me. And it's always effortless, because you can tell that they're not trying to get anywhere with you, that they're not using you as a means to an end. And so it's light, it's carefree, it's easy, it's effortless. And the minute that it feels like work, it's because I'm trying to get somewhere. And so I have to work to get somewhere. And my recommendation is to just focus on being a friend, being there for your friends, not being a girlfriend, but being the friend. And usually, in my opinion, if you're being the friend and it's being light, it's easy to feel that intimacy without it being purely sexual. And I think we get that confused too. And we think that all intimacy has to be in the bedroom, but sometimes intimacy is just sitting next to someone in silence.
Yeah.
Just holding their hand, just being in their company, just giving them a hug, just giving them space. If you notice that they're a little overwhelmed and you're like, they're a little frazzled, they're a little frantic, and it's like, you know what? I don't think there's anything I can say. I'm just going to give them space. And whenever they want to have a chat, I'm going to welcome them back with warm, open arms, metaphorically or literally. And that in and of itself is so appreciated, because sometimes it's not that you have to do anything. It's doing nothing is intimate. And when the environment feels open and light and intimate, it is usually very hard for it not to get hot and steamy when it's already when that's the environment, right? And so that's what I've noticed in relationships in the past is the sex was always the best when it felt the lightest, when the friendship felt the fullest, and no one was trying to use anyone. And the minute that we try to use each other, shit gets heavy and sex gets terrible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that said, though, you see, it's funny because, again, we always want to oversimplify things like, a relationship. It's a relationship. We're in a relationship. Now it's a relationship. It's like nothing's changed. You are still going through the day-to-day process of being a human being with another human being. And this is why vulnerability and intimacy go hand in hand. Okay? When it's not self-defining, which is admittedly where a lot of relationships start. The guy measures himself according to his ability to get the date, and then to get the date to bed, and then to get the date to marriage, and then to get the date to make dinner. Like there's.
Can we squeeze in a beer in there?
Pump out a few units,
right? And so he's like, yeah, me the man, me do the sex thing,
me Tarzan,
all
me
that,
Jane.
right? But and admittedly the same goes on the woman's side, where they're using that because they know the man's single-minded, so there's that relationship. But
here's an ankle.
A relationship that goes beyond that becomes one of two human beings having an honest, authentic experience with one another as they try to figure fucking life out. That's what a relationship is. And once you're in it, it's going to go back and forth. You're going to have times where it's hot and steamy, and you're going to have times where you can't get it going, and then you're going to have times when you don't want to get it going, and then you're going to have times when you do want to get going, but you're too fucking busy. Like, you're going to have a lot of shit, and it's going to go back and forth, and that's why it's so important to be vulnerable with each other, to be self-honest with each other, to be able to look beyond how you need to feel about yourself, so that way you can see that the person's going through the same shit you are. Confusion and uncertainty and a little bit of loneliness and maybe some need. And so if you can see that and work with them and not just fall into you're the husband, I'm the wife. We're in a relationship. These are all very simple conceptual things. Why aren't they working? It's because you're not being there with each other. You're not in an actual living relationship if it's just an idea. But that said, if you are a listener right now and you do find yourself going through a hard part in your relationship, I just want you to know, fuck, at least you got there. Because at one point, you weren't even there. You weren't even in a relationship. You were still trying to figure out how to be enough of a human being and being vulnerable enough to go have that fucking conversation to talk to the girl before getting the girl to come to dinner. So you were still going through all that. Right? And it was those moments of vulnerability, those moments of getting outside your comfort zone that allowed you to connect deeper with another person. That's where you learned it. Right? So keep doing that. If you're not in a relationship right now, don't need one. Don't be sitting there judging yourself like, oh, I'm not in a relationship, therefore something's wrong with me.
No, nothing's wrong.
Recognize that this is an opportunity for you to work on that vulnerability in the same way it will be an opportunity once you do meet someone. But the name of the game never changes. It's always about connection. And that's always about not playing a fucking role. It's really not. As soon as you're a role, even a role such as friend. And this is why I resisted the word friend for a long time. And it's because friend often comes with a role, an expectation, an idea that is self-soothing, self-gratifying, that fills my fucking needs and puts a hell of a pressure on everybody else who would dare to enter the arena of friend, quote unquote. So those aren't really friends. And yet that is how we often think of friends. We think of friends as our support network. Tell me that's not fucking self-absorbed in itself. I have friends, so they're here for me. I don't want you as a friend. Fuck that.
Sounds like work.
That's right.
It's like an image of one person on top and all their friends boosting them up.
That's how
That's
people
the
see
support.
it, though. And if I don't make it, you'll be here for me, right? So they actually start catering their friendships according to who is the most secure.
They turn their friendship into a pyramid scheme. They're at the top of it,
Yeah,
recruiting other people to support the other people who are supporting them.
Mhm.
But that's what
Only
we do with
approved people.
relationships too. You know, we
Yeah.
look for somebody who's going to solve all of our problems, check all the boxes, provide, you know, all of our wants and none of our dislikes. And that's why people go into the dating scene and they got a checklist.
I straight up was just gonna say, like, I've come across people who have actual lists. Granted, like, that was people I knew when we were teenagers and stuff, but still people maintain degrees of that, like at least components of that. And it goes hand in hand with thinking like an overarching sense of there being this right way to live. Because I've also heard people who have expressed, you know, checklists say, well, there is a right way to live.
It's insane.
There's a right way to live. And how much that will
Check,
like,
please.
Yeah.
No,
it's like, what way is that exactly? The way that you prefer, the way that satisfies all of your needs, all
I
of
get
your.
this to go.
You know what? I didn't even take a
Let me
bite.
take
I'm just
that
gonna
right way with me. Yeah, but like how much that's because that perspective that there's a right way, like that's just a little dot in this expansive field that is like if you're focused on that, you don't see anything else, you don't feel anything else, you just it's tunnel vision. You're focused on that, believing that right way, and then as soon as there isn't so much of a sense of there being a right way, because the right way will trickle into everything. It'll trickle into how you interact with people. It'll trickle into how you talk, how you speak, how you think about yourself, how you measure yourself, all based on this quote unquote right way. And if there isn't so much of a guarantee of that, which goes along with opinions, with preferences, they're all tied into this overarching sense of there being a right way and the assumption that I know it. The assumption that I know that right way. If that isn't there, that goes with opinions. So looking at those opinions and seeing that like maybe they're not the best driver of any situation. And if you're not having and holding on to so many opinions, there is more leeway, more freedom. And then, you know, the right way doesn't trickle into everything that you do and cut you off from everything that you're doing and cause you to be very, very tense in trying to either get there, or if you think you are there, trying to maintain it. And it just can create this whole hellstorm for yourself. And it's like it's raining in hell, believing there is a right way, believing that you're doing it the right way. They're both the same. And without that, because it all cuts you off. It'll either cut you off in your pursuit of getting there, or cut you off as you're believing that you're doing it. Because then no one else really is, unless they're fitting your idea. And that'll cut you off from majority of people, besides very few. And those are usually, you know, the communities that people stay within, is just those that satisfy that same sense of, no, there's a right way. Yeah, there's definitely a right way. And we all know it. And so we'll hang out and talk about that, and then judge anyone else who is living outside of that, is living differently by necessity, because you're focused on that and feeling okay with yourself. But that trade cuts you off from a lot of the world.
It's not worth it.
Well said.
I was like, oh man, no. It is. It really is. It's like you built this cage because the outside world seemed so scary, and then you felt like, okay, now I'm protected, but now I can't leave, because if I leave, then I'm at risk. And then you think, you know, oh, that's not so bad. I can make a crown. You make a crown out of paper and you walk around this tiny little fucking cage thinking, I am in a kingdom of one. This is safety. This is beautiful. I am protected. And it is hell. But you look at that, you look at the pits of hell and think that is a nice walkway. You think that it's this wonderful place because you think that the safety is worth it. You think that sacrificing freedom is worth it for comfort, for the illusion of control, for the illusion of safety. It's like, what are you so scared of? Because if it's going to kill you, quote unquote, you're going to be dead. What's there to worry about? And if it's not going to kill you, then what's it going to do? Hurt your feelings? Like ultimately, because if it's not causing physical damage, right, it's causing emotional turmoil, and it's like you don't have the ability to get over it, whether it's someone doing something that you don't like, you doing something you don't like, a combination of those things. It's like you can't get over your opinion. Of course you can. You were existing before you had an opinion. You were just running around when we were younger. We were just jumping from moment to moment. We weren't thinking about how well we were doing. We weren't thinking, unless someone else brought it up. You got to be a good girl. You got to be a good boy. Unless someone actually brought it up to you, you were enjoying whatever you were enjoying. I remember sitting in a room looking at the same Barbie for hours, loving it. Not productive, not creative, just sitting there, just brushing her hair, just sitting there, not thinking about how well I'm brushing and not thinking about what I could be doing. I could be coloring. Oh no. I could be reading. I could be playing pretend. It's like you didn't care about doing other things. You were in that moment, and that was enough. That was worth it. And now we traded our experience for the opinion, and we think that our opinion is more worth our attention, and our opinion is worth being the first and only priority, and it's really not. But you only can feel like it's not worth it once you've made it your only priority. And so it's so interesting to when I can either catch myself in real time or I'm seeing someone else prioritize their opinion over the moment that they're in. And it's like, fuck, man, it's so easy to slip back into that because it's always available. But if that's always available, so is not needing that. So is not prioritizing that. They're both equally available. One is not more available than the other, even when I've convinced myself otherwise.
That's right. One just doesn't offer the same glamour and security and false comfort. That's the thing. I've noticed, and I love this because, again, it's never about the words, but we've been using the word opinion this episode in the same way we use the word perception.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all it is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How much of your perception of the world and the universe is down to your opinion of it, your opinion of you, how you want to see it.
Yeah, there's that phrase, what you take with you is what you can leave behind, or what you leave behind is what you take with you. And that sense of like the opinion, because I was chewing on that a bit this morning too, is just opinion itself, and how much that's something that is valued highly in the world, debates, discussions. It's incredibly self-defining, and has especially if you haven't done a lot of things throughout your life, like to have specific opinions of different situations or new situations or jumping into something that's different. It's like you can hold on to this idea that, oh, I haven't done that much in my life, want to get more experiences, new experiences, but then all of the new experiences are new. They're different. They're not comfortable. And so because maintaining that, and like what got you to the point of not having as many experiences, like not having been through so many things, was following that opinion, because it gets more and more rigid, gets more and more tense, gets more and more specific, gets more and more something that's tried to be maintained. And your opinion of yourself becomes the utmost priority. The opinion of how you're living your life relative to those groups that, believe the same thing, maybe throughout childhood, throughout upbringing. Those are where a lot of those opinions come from. It's like, oh, interact with these types of people, not these types of people, do these types of things, act in this type of way, post this type of stuff, talk about these types of things, share these types of things, don't share these types of things. And it all circles around this opinion that was very much, it came from spots. Most of our opinions don't come like authentically from ourselves, or there can be, because it's not to say like don't have opinions, don't have fun with things, like don't do a movie review or say if fucking loved a movie or hated a movie or whatever, because there's no line there either. But taking a good look at what they are and how much are actually coming from you, I think is super, super important, because the alternative is just maintaining the same. And so if you're feeling like you haven't done that many things and are afraid to try new things, it's like, during new experiences, different experiences, like those opinions, it's almost like you're more sensitive to things because there isn't that comfort. And so the opinions can come back pretty quick. They're almost like grabbing at you to like go back to like,
hey, remember me? I'm your favorite opinion. Over here.
You focused on me so much. You focused on me. It feels
we spent
good
so much
to
time
look
together.
at me.
What's wrong, bro? I thought we were
just
good.
One more hit. Just one more hit. It's like a drug. It's like a drug.
Oh yeah, but imagine it's like it's so funny because it's like I'm imagining like I'm dropped into this scenario that's completely new, and would it be more efficient to, or I guess would it make more sense to stop in this new environment and think about all the past environments, or pay attention and be sensitive to what's around me? It's like, no, it would make more sense to pay attention, and yet we don't do that in our lives. We're like, no, I'm in this moment, and I'm going to say it's like another one because it looks like one that I'm used to, but technically this is a brand new experience. It's a blank canvas, and instead of thinking about all the other paintings, I could just pay attention to this one, but I don't. I tend to think about what I've drawn before more so than paying attention to being sensitive to the other factors in that room. But it's so easy to think that would make more sense because it's like, oh, but if it's similar, I might be able to use it. It's like, yeah, but if it's useful, it's going to come up anyways. You don't actually have to look for those previous experiences that you can utilize in the future. They come up anyway. So you don't have to look for what's similar. Just be sensitive more so than going through the Rolodex of your memories to see which one looks the most similar and then match it later. By then it's too late.
Oh yeah.
Moment has changed.
I just got really excited that somebody used the word Rolodex.
Yeah.
I'm like, Rolodex. Somebody younger is just like, what?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Like, no, it's like a Rolodex. So they're just like, I have no idea what that is. I'm like,
it's like the pages of contacts, right?
It's like little business cards.
Note cards.
Yeah, because you could roll through it.
Yeah.
It was like a whole spiral if you were a really busy motherfucker. Right?
I think I got that somewhere here. You probably organize it like by alphabetical or something.
Yeah. Or like at least, or company name.
Industry,
right?
Yeah.
Like industry.
It could be customized.
Whatever the fuck you wanted, absolutely.
Marie, fuck yes.
Yeah. See what I'm saying?
It can feel like that with thinking. Like you're going back to try and pick something.
There's like, no, pay attention.
Connect.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's why
it's like the
algorithm on TikTok for me is just it's just a perfect example of how your brain works. It's like, what's that? You spent more than 2 seconds focusing on this topic? Here's more. Right? What, you don't want to see more of those thoughts? Swipe quickly,
Swipe faster.
But that's really it. And that's why, like, if you go to my TikTok For You page, I see dope shit. Whereas my daughter recently made the very mature decision to remove TikTok from her phone for a bit. And it's just because the For You page was just inundating her with crap that is often, what we focus on as a teenager, for example, like famous people, mental health stuff, depression, like all of this stuff that you're worried about or excited about. And so your For You page becomes a fucking dualistic spectrum from one pole to the other.
Your dream and nightmare.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happens for a lot of us. And we don't realize it, but it's because we focus on our desires and our fears.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you watch something on TikTok that you're afraid of or dislike, you're going to see more of it. When you watch something on TikTok because you want that thing, you want to be like that person, you're going to see more of that.
Right.
Whereas if you watch TikTok like I do, not really being afraid of being less and not trying to be more, all of a sudden you find some dope, interesting shit, right? Little bits of history, little bits of science, sometimes an amusing cat video, things like that. But the point is that you find things that help enrich the experience you're already having rather than looking for an experience through the screen. This is why for me, doom scrolling is not a thing, because my life is fulfilling. I'm not looking for fulfillment through TikTok. I'm not looking for fulfillment through a movie or a piece of music or a piece of art or anything, right? My fulfillment is here now in the fact that there is no lack unless I start thinking of one.
Yeah.
There's no lack until I start thinking about me as a thing that can lack.
And that's an opinion that, becomes that internal experience. And that's the trade, I think, with those things is like, if it's about your experience, it's not about you. If it's about you, it's not going to be so much about your experience. And like
Nice.
TikTok, if you are focused on like gratifying something, satisfying something, fulfilling some degree of like, oh, I'm feeling like not 100% all good with myself. I'm like 80%. So I'm going to, get some videos in, get some relationships in, get some external stuff to fulfill that 20% that I'm arbitrarily making up right now, but also all the time. If I think that's the case, and that's very much making it about yourself, to just feel okay with yourself instead of being just a conduit for your experience. And that's really the trade, is your experience, like that sense of freedom and relaxation right now. And the alternative is the rigidity and tension that comes to some degree with holding on to some opinion or something, some belief, and the initial opinion being something that I lack in some way, shape, or form. And then that becomes opinions about everything else to satisfy, just that feeling of, okay, I lack all these things, but at least right now I feel like I'm correct. At least right now I feel like I'm right. And it's like that you get a little hit to 100% that comes plummeting down real quick. And it's like this trade all the time that each and every time just chips away more and more at your ability to have faith in yourself, instead of letting go of those preferences and opinions and really making it about making the most of your experience that then informs you. And I've definitely, in everything that we've been doing, I've gotten much more of an appreciation of just making it about the experience, because you just don't know. You just don't know what something's going to lead to, or what one thing that you do, a way that you spend your day. Because there was some time, when we were here and we would go out and about and do things, and I was like, this isn't work. We got to be doing work, but it's not. It's like that work, life balance, like it all circles together, and they're all opportunities, even to do, like, to experience new things, to expand the comfort zone, to expand yourself, and to have, like, leave a ripple, anywhere you go, there's that opportunity, which is so incredibly beautiful when you're making it about the experience. And there's going to be a ripple one way or the other. And it's like, is your ripple about the experience? Or is your ripple about you, with very little sensitivity to your environment?
Man, I love just the contradiction there. I love it, because if you don't know what you're hearing, that sounds like nonsense. The more it's about you, the less it's about your life. The more it's about your life, the less it's about you. You're like, hold on, didn't you just say at the beginning of this episode I should be taking care of myself? And what's funny is that the you you're talking about there isn't you.
It's the concept.
It's the idea of you, right? So it's not that making it about your life isn't making it about you. It's making it about the reality of you, which is never the you you're thinking of. So it has to be about each moment. It has to be about that depth of presence, because that's what you got. That's all you got.
And you can't hide your priorities. You can't hide when you're prioritizing the idea of you and when you're prioritizing the moment, because it's so clearly evident. When it's about you, it's heavy. It's when it's about the idea of you, it's heavy. It's rough. It feels like walking through fucking mud. When you're prioritizing the moments, it's effortless, because you're not having to think about doing it, because you're not thinking about you doing it. So it's effortless because there's no effort. There's no you that has to give effort. It's just life unfolding. And the experience of life feels deeper when you're not stuck holding on to the floaty that you think that is the idea of you, right? And you're so scared about the depth of the ocean of potential, and you're holding on to this floaty thinking like, I'm gonna drown, I've got to hold on. I don't know what life's gonna be like if I don't have the idea. And it's like, yeah, but that idea wasn't always there. But life is the opportunity. The experience is always there. And I love how you said, like, you can't, you make a ripple either way. because you always do. And you don't even know the impact of either of those ripples, because seeing somebody so caught up in the idea of themselves has had such an impact on me, just as much as seeing somebody be floating through life, without being weighed down by the idea of themselves. Both of those have an impact because both are just as available to me and just as likely. So when I encounter somebody that's super caught up, I'm like, oh man, fuck, that was me earlier today. That could be me again right now, because that idea always feels like it's so tempting, because it offers this comfort of familiarity. Oh, I know that idea. Of course I know it. I built it.
Yeah, exactly. And oh man, I just had a thought, and I was like,
I love when
hearing
that
so
happens.
good, and then I was like, oh, holding on, and I was like, oh shit, there it goes, there
And
it
it's
goes.
gone.
Yeah. Oh man.
But this moment is not.
Again, and of course, it's like, as we're talking about this, as we're talking about like prioritizing yourself, the experience, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And so like there, I could freak out and make it, more about me, and like double down, because you can do that and triple down and quadruple down, and then all of a sudden you're in this like the fetal position, basically,
Right.
just continuing to do so, instead of, with those floaties, like trying to kind of learn how to swim with floaties on. Like swimming with floaties on isn't easy at all. Like it's way tougher than, like, you can't actually really, you can kind of move around, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't really work super well. And so you got to take them off to learn.
You can't go through the water. You can only skate on the surface.
Yeah,
Right?
you're holding onto the floaty.
Which
You
makes
can't
the
go through.
waves hit you that much harder. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're wearing a floaty, the waves are just lifting you up and down,
And
right?
dragging
Whereas
you
if you
everywhere.
can dive under the wave as the crest comes, it's different, right? Like if you can swim, the waves don't hit you as hard. And that's the thing, is that we're holding on to this flotation device, this idea of ourself, but it's actually making the waves feel stronger. In the same way, like the river doesn't hurt you until you decide to dig in and fight it.
Yeah, like trying to stand your ground with those opinions and those perspectives. It's like, no, I know. It's like just a bunch of people standing in a river, like a fucking one of those lazy rivers, with the tubes.
Right, arm linked.
And
Fight the river.
Well,
Hold strong, everyone.
It's like three inches of water. You like get up out of your tube. It's like, well, I got to stand my ground so I don't drown. I got to stay here because I don't know what's next. I don't know what's to come. Instead of just like getting back in the tube and letting it continue to happen, like making it about that experience, maybe getting out and swimming for a bit. Who knows? But doing things along the river as it goes. But then you got to get real okay with change real quick. Because like you think about floating down a river, the river doesn't stop. There's no points in the river unless you hit a little pool of stagnation, but then you see what happens there. There's like overgrowth, it dries out. There isn't any movement. You kind of stay the same.
Still waters where infections brew.
Exactly.
You need
Disease
movement. Exactly. Disease
very
grows where there is no movement.
Yeah. And then you look at our society and you go, wow, we are really stagnant.
Really like our in-ground pool, though.
Hey, man, I mean, once upon a time, humanity used to be nomadic, for a reason. And that actually caused us to have to adapt and change and learn more about our environment. I mean, hell, most people leave their state, they're fucking lost.
Seriously.
It feels like they're on a different planet just because everybody speaks a little differently and the signs are a bit different and the fucking brands have changed. Like just that. Whereas once upon a time, we fucking wander from one side of the continent to the other.
I'd hop on a ship not knowing if I'd make it back. I'm like, onward, Captain. Let's go.
Straight up one way adventure.
Maybe I'll make it back. I'll see you later, Mom. Maybe. Bye. I gotta go.
And now what we
the
have
seas are calling
is the option to explore our consciousness, which is something we've been trying to avoid doing. We've been very much looking for the right way to think, what it is to be a human being. And even that is a perception. Even that's an opinion. Well, are you saying I'm not human? I'm saying that your form is not what you are, that maybe there is more to this. We forget that any more than, the awareness that is the tree is, a separate awareness in the limb. It's the same fucking awareness. It's the same thing, but the limb thinks to itself, I'm doing this on my own. It's not aware of the tree that it grows from, right? But it's an extension of it. And the same is true for us, right? you think of yourself as a human being. I look at you as an eyeball that's human shaped.
Mhm.
Because that's what we are. We are all eyeballs for the very same awareness. But each eyeball is slightly different. Humans are different shaped eyeballs. We see things differently. And you know that actually by the different spectrum of sound, different spectrum of sight, different, like our 5 senses. That's a very unique fucking eyeball.
Mhm.
You go out and you meet other things though, and they sense things totally different. Dogs have a
Yes.
totally different range of smell.
Mhm.
Animals have a different range of hearing.
Mhm.
All of this stuff, these are different eyeballs for the same awareness.
Mhm.
And yet we think that because one of us is an eyeball and the other one's an ear, that we're not the same fucking body.
Mhm.
Just because we experience reality differently, we forget that we're still taking in information for the whole.
Mhm.
It drives the whole. It's not like the eyeball is only satisfying the brain. The eyeball is informing the whole fucking body on how to move, on how to adapt, on how to continue surviving.
Mhm.
You are not just taking in information for yourself. You're taking information for all of us. All of us. And that's why it's so important to express yourself. And that's why it's so important to let go of that flotation device, to actually be part of the fucking water. So that way we can all be influenced by it, rather than you just trying to stay on the surface where we can't learn from you.
You have to be willing to dig in. And that's like even the uniqueness beyond just, human to dog to plant, because all of those realities are different. Like even us, like how we see, the three of us have very different,
Absolutely.
seeing, hearing, smelling, all of
What
those
do you mean
things.
you don't see what I see?
No, everyone sees what I see and the way that I see it and how I want to see
That's
it.
how I know
and
you're doing it
wanna
wrong.
view things.
Exactly.
That's how I can guarantee that. But it does, like, we can expand that assumption. Like, if I'm believing that my opinion is correct, like there is some degree of a way to like satisfy that, and that's that sense of control. Like, oh, I have this idea or I have this opinion, but most people have opinions. I've certainly had opinions that took no action behind them. Like if someone's at the gym or something, and they, like, I've heard this one before where some people like to just do one machine for a little while, and then some people like to rotate.
Yeah.
And if you believe that one is the correct way or another, it's like
person.
you can hold on to that super tightly and then not even interact with that person, instead of talking to them and then finding out, oh, there's actually another benefit to this here.
Or maybe they're dealing with a specific injury that makes it so they had to modify their own routine, right? Maybe what's best for them isn't what's best for you because you're fucking different.
Exactly. Each and every person unique and different. So of course we would live unique and different lives.
Yes.
And that, like, the depth of believing that, like, there's a right and a wrong way to live, that there is a way that you should be living is madness. It's straight up madness. But trying to maintain that will make you feel a little bit mad and very confused all the time, and not very sensitive to very much at all. And again, it's that opinion, that preference that we can take with us in every moment, or not focus on quite so much.
Before we wrap up today, because we got about 12 minutes left, I wanted to talk about, well, two things specifically, because we're talking about sensitivity a lot, and sensitivity is super important. On the other hand, it's also important to develop a little bit of a thicker skin. So as much as, be sensitive, don't get blown off your feet by the slightest breeze, right? And that's really important, just to remember that. Like, you can be sensitive and not be threatened by everything. Like, they go hand in hand. The more you can relax into that sensitivity, the more like a fucking rock you feel, because the wave's just a pound. You're not running from them. You're informed by all of them, but they can't knock you over because they're from you. And they are you. So that, I think, is really important to keep in mind, that you're far stronger and far more able to adapt than you think. You can be more sensitive. You can be sensitive to everything. That doesn't mean being blown around by it. That doesn't mean not still making your own decisions. Understanding that somebody isn't going to like your answer doesn't mean you shouldn't give it.
Right.
right? And so that helps to keep that in mind. But on totally opposite note, just because again we're running down to the end of our time here, I want to give a shout out to our Discord god, Jazz. I really did, because our community Discord is awesome. It's amazing, and it's amazing largely because of everybody who's helped to grow it and participate in it and be there for the conversations on that Discord, but also largely because of Jazz. Jazz has put in so much time and effort and just putting the attention into understanding not just the Discord, how Discord works, but also the needs of the community. The people who have been talking to Jazz on Discord have very much helped inform everything that community is doing. So we just want to give a huge shout out to Jazz, who is also going to be working with us in the future with Dualistic Unity as a company, as our tech god. I'm going to be talking to Jazz later on this afternoon about some changes to our website, possibly some integration with other stuff later on. So we're really excited. But I think it's just really important, if you know Jazz and you're on Discord, or if you know Jazz from any of the groups, if you see Jazz, give them a big fucking thumbs up. Just let them know that we appreciate everything that's being done on that end, because we really do. And it has come without request. It's always been offered. It's always been, this is something that I could do and I would like to do. It's always been at the expense of Jazz's own personal time. This has always been something that Jazz has put in for their own reasons. And so I just want to give a big fucking shout out to Jazz. We love you, man, for sure.
Fuck yeah, absolutely. Jazz has been, the investment of time and the focus and the attention and the willingness. Like, I resonate so much with a lot of the, things you'll bring up and share, and beyond, all of the incredible work you've done with Discord and in the community, and connecting with people, and connecting people too, is in your own life. Like, all of the things that you're willing to express and share and open up about has been incredibly inspiring. And so from both perspectives, both, interactions in the community, but also in your experience too, it's been, really, really incredible to see. And I resonate with a lot of the shifts and the changes, and that it's not always easy, looking at certain things and sides of yourself and realizing that, but the shifts are all happening as we are. So fuck yeah, Jazz. Love you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jazz. It has been an absolute pleasure watching you play with reality. And then I love how sometimes the reality that you're playing with is the Discord, and how it's just this beautiful lump of clay that has truly transformed since it's gotten into your hands. And so I really appreciate just all of the enthusiasm and the genuine joy that you're expressing. And we get the privilege of being able to see that, and to join you and to collaborate with you, because you are very much an open door. And I appreciate that so much, because sometimes, you give someone an opportunity and they feel overwhelmed, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems like you are having fun, keeping it light, and just exploring your own curiosity. And so I applaud that. Thank you so much, Jazz. And I'm excited to see you continue to just create and express yourself.
Yeah.
Love you, Jazz.
And you're an awesome friend. Just want to throw that out there as well. That said, we are wrapping up here very shortly, so I do want to make a quick announcement. Today is Sunday. So that means that later on this afternoon, after this episode, and then the tier 2 call on Patreon, and the tier 3 call, which we do every Sunday, I will be releasing the details for our Port Alberni retreat to tier 1. Tier 1 Patreon supporters will have access to that today. I just want to remind you, if you are a Patreon supporter, you can save money on your retreat ticket. There's actually a link to your coupon code on the retreat details, so the retreat ticket details page. You'll get a link to that later on this afternoon. If you would like to save more money on your retreat ticket, I recommend that you just upgrade to a tier 2 or a tier 3 membership, even just for the month. Tier 3 member saves $350 on any retreat ticket, so it's well worth it. Tier 2 saves $150. So just keep that in mind, and if you'd like to get that before we release the tickets this afternoon, please do so. Tickets will be publicly available as of next Sunday afternoon. So next Sunday afternoon, the tickets will be available to the general audience. If you've been waiting, definitely join us for this. This is going to be our fourth full retreat. This is our fourth full retreat that goes from Saturday all the way through to the following Sunday. So you only need to take off 1 week of work. You only need to be off from Monday to Friday.
5 days.
Right? You come by the Saturday, we drop you back off in the airport at Sunday at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You fly back or take the ferry to Vancouver and then fly back from there. If you're coming, by the way, I do recommend if you don't want to take a plane directly to Nanaimo, you can take a ferry from Vancouver to Nanaimo. Vancouver is way easier to land in and much cheaper.
Yeah, and that ferry ride's pretty cool. So if you are thinking about that, recommend Horseshoe Bay. It's a fun little inlet there, and regardless, it's beautiful. You can go to Swassen as well. But yeah, Port Alberni, that's going to be a good time. The return, third time, 2 years after our first retreat in 2022.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, 2022. Holy shit.
We're going to close out 2024 with this event. Hell yeah. And then 2025, we've got
what do we have,
all kinds of new shit coming in 2025. Andrew is currently hard at work brainstorming locations for future events in 2025. If you have any suggestions, if you have any requests for locations, maybe a state or a country, let us know specifically on Patreon, or just reach out on Discord or social media and just let us know, like, hey, I would love to see you guys. I know we were talking about doing an event in Ontario next year, probably towards the summer, because nobody wants to go to Ontario in the winter. So we already had a few people respond to that comment on social media and go, Ontario, yes. So that seems like it's going to be in the near future. But if you would like us to come to your state, if you would like us to go to maybe you have a retreat center in mind that you're like, this would be perfect, I've been here before, send us the information and we will keep it in mind, because we definitely do want to see as many of you as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're also thinking Arizona, New Mexico, Southwest US, possibly in some of the colder months. So I know cannabis is legal in Arizona, I believe, but a lot of fun things coming up, a lot of opportunities, really. And that's what I'm seeing all of this as. And it's cool to see, life is just opportunity when you're not so focused on how you're going to do at something. If you can just like try something and not focus so goddamn much on how you're doing, how it's going, how you're doing relative to how you think you should be doing. It's like you don't know how you're doing. So the more you do, the more you learn, the more you shift, the more you grow. You don't know how things are going to be connected. You don't know what relationships you're going to come across, what kind of people you're going to come across. So it's like, if all you got is right now, why not give it all your attention? Like, why not give it all your focus? Like, what exactly has been the benefit to not giving it all of your focus throughout your life, to trying to understand it or control it or have some idea about how you're doing in it? Like, it's gotten you here, which is awesome, but it's also kept you tied up, and kept you rigid and kept you tense. And that's where it comes from, is trying to know. It's like, I know I'm doing great right now, or I know I'm doing terrible right now. It's like, no, you fucking don't. No, you don't. And that hit of certainty feels kind of good both ways, and you don't know. And to give up one, you got to give up the other.
Yeah. And something that I have been doing recently is just when I am really certain, like the damn car registration, which I mentioned previously and definitely not going to go into it now, but like something recently happened and I was so certain. And then I was like, how's that going for you, Amanda? Whether I'm exactly. And why does it suck when I'm so certain that I'm doing great and I'm so certain that I'm doing shitty? And it's like, because I know that I'm not certain. And it sucks because it's not reality, and I'm not convinced that I really know. And that's what sucks, is that no matter how hard I pretend, I always know that I'm pretending.
Yeah. It's funny. We have like 30 seconds left. I just want to share this because I think this was one of my favorite responses to somebody recently. I had posted a video about, God and being yourself and all that. And somebody responded in typical Christian fashion, like, well, to recognize that we're at fault is responsible to God, but to think that you're perfect is ridiculous. And so I wrote back and I was like, I'm sorry that you think your value is measurable and that you know everything. Mm-hmm. To which they gave me the expected response, well, I don't know everything. Only God is perfect. And I wrote, well, you seem to know that you're at fault. You seem to know that you're imperfect. You seem to know that God is judging you. It sounds like you know more than your God. Mm-hmm. That person never wrote back to me. So I was rather happy with that comment, and I thought I'd end the episode on that note. We're going to continue in 15 minutes with a Tier 2 Patreon call. Join us if you can. If not, we'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Dualistic Unity Raw, as well as an episode at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Fuck yeah. See you there.